Not that we need a reminder, but the physicality of football again on display in Week 7, and some notable injuries coming out of it. Deshaun Watson, that'll be a season with an Achilles. Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels dealing with some ribs. He's week to week in anticipation of that matchup of 1 versus 2 in that rookie quarterback class. Raiders quarterback Aiden O'Connell has a broken thumb. He's been assigned to the IR. Brandon Ayuk also will miss the remainder of the season with both ACL and MCL tears. It's the season for Bucs wide receiver Chris Godwin with a gruesome dislocated ankle. And Mike Evans set to miss. That is a notable amount of time, not expected before the Week 11 bye. CBS Sports fantasy analyst Heath Cummings here to help, hopefully. Heath, this is something, man. I mean, another rash of serious injuries. We'll get to waiver ads here in a bit, but let's start with one on his way back. How are you processing the imminent return of Tua Tagovailoa and what that means for his weapons around him?
You know, it's all systems go for the Miami Dolphins. We came into this season viewing Tua as a borderline top 12 quarterback. Tyreek Hill was in the conversation for #1 overall, certainly a top 5 pick. Jalen Waddle, a must-start wide receiver. Devon Achane, maybe even Raheem Mostert we want to start as well. Those guys have all been crushed by the lackluster play of the backup quarterbacks in Miami. But Tua's back, and while we do certainly have concern for his health, this is not the type of injury that you would imagine there's going to be any lasting repercussions from. So we expect this to be the same offense we thought it would be at the beginning of the season. At the beginning of the season, when they threw for over 300 yards in Week 1, you start Tyreek Hill, you start Jalen Waddle, you start Devon Achane.
No Week 8 buys, which means you likely have your quarterback in tow. When we look at that list of injuries as it pertains to quarterbacks, not many highly rostered, highly started names. But if we are looking to claim a QB, maybe a spot start, where are we looking this week?
Well, you know, it's funny you say that because with Jayden Daniels' injury, you may be missing him. Maybe some people are finally giving up on Patrick Mahomes. There are some names out there I like. I think you have to go add Russell Wilson after what he did in his first start. I'm pretty excited about Bo Nix this week as well. But the #1 ad is the guy we just talked about. It's Tua. He was ranked, as I said, as a borderline top 12 quarterback coming into the season. You pretty much expect if he's playing in good weather, he's going to throw for 300 yards. He's probably going to throw multiple touchdown passes. If he throws 3 of them, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback. He's got a chance to do that this week in a good matchup. Add Tua, start Tua this week.
I'm glad you brought up Daniels for a moment here because he's listed as week to week, or at least was referred to as such from his head coach. If he does go against the Bears in that vaunted defense, we know he should be limited in that dual threat aspect. Is he still a start in your eyes?
I think he's just amongst that group of quarterbacks that has so much upside you can't sit him. It certainly is a risky floor. He could get hit in the ribs one time and come out of the game. He could decide he's not going to run for a game, and then he'd certainly be less desirable. But if Jayden Daniels is playing, I'm starting him.
All right, let's move to some other names here. Brandon Ayuk gone for the season with a torn ACL, MCL. What does that mean for those other highly rostered assets on San Francisco's team, with Deebo Samuel also in question, dealing with some pneumonia-type symptoms?
Yeah, that's the really interesting part of this, because generally speaking, the way we look at this is you can't ever sit the 49ers stars because they have too much upside, but because they have too many weapons, you're always waiting which one's going to be bad this week. If Deebo's back and Ayuk's out, then it's just all systems go. Top 12 wide receiver for Deebo Samuel. It's George Kittle as maybe the #1 tight end in fantasy. Everybody else can kind of fight for scraps. The one guy who's really interesting, and Jacob Gibbs has done a great job on Twitter of illustrating this, Jawan Jennings has been a superstar when Brandon Ayuk has not been on the field on a per route basis. We saw him score 46.5 fantasy points in one game earlier this season. Now, Jennings himself not entirely healthy. They're hopeful to get him back. I'm putting in waiver claims for Jennings. If he's active this week, I'm probably starting him.
All right, let's continue with the theme of dinged up wide receivers. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, both lost for some amount of time. Godwin for the season, Evans not expected back before the Week 11 bye. What does this mean for Tampa Bay and that offense? We're talking about 50% of Baker Mayfield's passing production this season. Is this a big bump on Bucky Irving, Rashad White? And what do we do with Baker Mayfield, who's been very productive as well in a fantasy position?
Yeah, not just very productive, but the #2 quarterback in all of fantasy, and a must-start, no doubt about it. I think we have to probably pull back on that with Baker Mayfield. I've dropped him outside of my top 12 this week, looking at him as more of a high-end number 2 quarterback. Might still get it done, but you certainly can't count on it. I think the running backs do see a little bit more work. It was interesting in the first week of this three-headed monster. We did not have a Tampa Bay running back who accounted for more than 33% of the rush share, but both Rachaad White and Bucky Irving scored touchdowns, so it was okay. The interesting thing is at wide receiver, Jalen McMillan can fill that Chris Godwin role, and if he does, that looks like the waiver wire pickup of the week for sure. Now, Cade Otton saw a huge target share, scored 18 PPR fantasy points on Monday night without these 2 wide receivers. Otton looks like a must-start tight end as well in this offense.
Yeah, very productive even prior to those injuries, and likely to see that greater target share moving forward. Target share, never a question as it pertains to Cooper Kupp, and I love your approach with some of these big names. If they're going, we're going with. Is it the same here for Kupp, or are you waiting for some confirmation here on Thursday Night Football?
We don't have that luxury. Like, listen, wide receiver was supposed to be the safe position. Half of them are hurt now. I'm so happy we have one coming back. I'm starting Cooper Kupp if he's playing. 36% target share the first 2 weeks of the season. That is a guy that you cannot leave on your bench. I'm going to assume if the Rams are playing him that he's okay. He's a top 15 wide receiver for us and a must-start option.
All right, you gave us a look at a potential wide receiver claim, so let's jump forward here to running back. It's a position that always can be a game of musical chairs, and we want to find a seat here, Heath. Who are you looking towards heading into Week 8?
And it's interesting, like with all the great wide receiver options we have on the waiver wire this week, we don't have a running back who just got hurt and we're replacing the starter. So we're kind of looking for someone who is probably not a starter but could be a flex. That's going to be Jaylen Warren, someone that we drafted in the single-digit rounds coming into the year. Didn't have the role that we expected early on, but we just saw in the Steelers' most recent game and Russell Wilson's first start, maybe that matters, 51% snap share for Warren. Had 14 touches, also a season high. Now, that didn't turn into fantasy production, but we know with his efficiency, with what he's been able to do in the past, if he's touching the ball that often, he's eventually going to score fantasy points. Only rostered in 52% of CBS leagues. Go add Jaylen Warren if he's available in your league.
As someone who lost their Week 7 matchup due to a defensive performance, take me to the waiver wire. Some people say it don't matter. Other people have taken it off the board entirely. Let's talk defense. Where are we looking for a waiver wire ad for defense?
Yeah, if you must start a defense, because they can be very frustrating. The Chargers defense is the one I'm looking for.
Okay.
They've been really good this year, and part of the reason is that ball control offense that Greg Roman runs. They are very run-heavy. As a rule, they are dominating time of possession. They should have no trouble doing that against Spencer Rattler and the New Orleans Saints. I think the Saints get a couple of wide receivers back. I don't think the Saints offense gets going in this game against the Chargers. They're a top 10 offense or defense for sure, and they're available in more than a third of leagues in CBS Sports.
Heath Cummings, same time next week?
That's right.
We'll see you there. We'll also see him on Fantasy Football Today. Heath Cummings, Jamie Eisenberg, Adam Azer, the whole gang. Dave Richard. I mean, don't send this to him. He's not going to like that pause. But you will like what you have to hear on Fantasy Football Today. All the latest news and notes. Download, subscribe, and enjoy Fantasy Football Today.